So
You know what it
eventually,
is, Carlos? I think it's his lack of experiencing other cultures. Because I think Poser's the classic example of someone that talks shit about other cultures without experiencing them. Um, yeah, I mean, like, when's the last time you went out of the country to experience another culture?
Why can't we be friends? 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 I seen you
welcome
around.
everyone to the Bewildered Herd podcast. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Like always, I am joined by my three lovely friends, Gian, Edgar, and Carlos. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah. So today, we're gonna have a nice discussion today. I'm actually excited to kind of talk a little bit further about this. I think it's gonna bring a lot of new. Let's just go around the room and introduce ourselves really quick. But this time, I kind of want to know like a little fun fact, just because it's a morning episode. What's your morning routine, and like what's your breakfast of choice? So if you want, I'll show you. I'll start. My name is Jose. I am the host of this episode, and my breakfast of choice is a coffee. It's actually not coffee. It's really just creamer with a splash of coffee. So gentlemen, cheers.
Right.
So that's my morning routine, and that's what I like to do every morning. So that was my introduction. Let's go with Gian.
My name is Gian. If you want to follow the same theme, the morning routine which I recently picked up is going to the gym. Follow the advice from a few weeks ago. My wife has given me the confidence and the courage to go back to the gym. So it's actually really good when I do go, even though I try to go right before the kids wake up in the morning. So I get pretty tired.
There's one random question. Have you ever thought about making your own little home gym at home?
It costs too much money. Yes, I had thought about it. It costs way too much money to do it. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to actually exercise and utilize it. I think it would be like kind of
Yeah.
paying it forward to my kids, right? My kids would probably be the ones that end up using it later on.
Your little kid's all buff. Like, come on, work out.
That's right.
Well, that's an awesome routine. That's an awesome morning routine, and I envy you, sir. But at the same time, I am proud of you that you take
Yeah,
the.
don't envy me. You should join. You should
You know,
go. We've
note to
encouraged you.
self. Note to self. All right, thank you, sir, for your intro. Next, we have Carlos. Introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Carlos. My breakfast of choice is oatmeal. I usually make it in bulk, so I have like 3 servings already saved in a Tupper. And so I have fruit with it, protein, oat milk, almonds, and then I usually have it with tea, like some sort of tea. Lately, I've really gotten into jasmine green tea, and you could brew it 3 times, and it tastes really good, and I very much feel the effects. And I've asked myself the question, like, what's the difference between this tea and cocaine? Like, it's just like, I've never tried cocaine, but it's just like I get like really hyper and like all energized, and it's really good. This is something that's not even a week old.
Wow.
But
Interesting.
yeah, that's my routine.
So,
Well, I guess-
so jasmine tea has a lot of caffeine in it?
I guess it depends. It's like green tea, jasmine green tea, and it smells really good. And when you brew it, it comes rolled up like in little spheres that remind me of pot, which, I like. Yeah, I'm really happy with my routine right now. Like, maybe I want to move in the direction of Gian and like getting a nice workout in before starting work.
Cool. Sir, randomly, do you still eat cottage cheese with fruit? That was like your breakfast of choice every morning in
Nah,
college.
that wasn't the breakfast of choice. That was just a random snack you saw me and were traumatized for the rest of your life. No, lately it's more Greek yogurt.
Okay.
Greek yogurt with fruit and almonds. It's like a good snack.
Okay. Sweet, sir. Sweet. Well, thank you so much, Lord. Lord. I thought it was at church. I thought it was at church. Thank you, dude. I'll edit that later. Thinking about
Yes,
something else.
we thank them too.
Thank you. I think of every day, guys. And then last but not least, Edgar.
Hey, what's up, guys? Yeah, I'm Edgar. My morning routine is unpredictable. Just having kids makes it unpredictable. The nature of my job is unpredictable. But normally I try to get a workout just like Gian. Sometimes I'll just lift weights here at my house. Sometimes I go swimming, biking, running. But sometimes I gotta go straight to work. And then my drink of choice is the coffee. It's like Hoser. No food, just coffee. And then I don't eat until like lunch or maybe I'll skip that too. Lots of fasting.
Cool. I heard that there's this podcaster, Andrew Huberman. He was saying how like if you fast and not even drink coffee till 2:30 after you wake up, it does a lot of changes in your body. Like it's healthy changes.
Mm.
So
That's it.
it's weird, but
In the
yeah,
afternoon.
yeah.
Interesting.
Like from the moment you wake up till like around 2:30, don't drink
Oh, like
coffee.
don't drink anything?
Don't drink anything. Don't
Oh.
eat anything. But I was like, dude, I can't do that. That's insane. Anyways, cool, sir. Well, thank you so much for your intro. And today, Gian has the topic of choice. So, sir, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I think the topic today that I wanted to bring up today is referring to culture. So if you just look up on Google, and thank you to the AI overview because it makes things so much easier. A nice little summary. So it just says culture changes over time, technology changes, people change, or other external factors, economy, or all of that. Those are factors that can change the way culture is viewed. And so, what I wanted to kind of bring up is over the few decades, over the last 100 years, we went from one culture where it was one specific society where everything was normalized to be a patriarchy, man first, white man first, privilege. And then it started to evolve over the years, right? We started getting the women's suffrage, started getting the civil rights movement. So we start, bringing more to the culture to the community. So, and that was a shift in the culture. I think it was labeled as counterculture. And then that has slowly progressed as technology has advanced over the last, 30 years, internet. Now we have FaceTime. We can span long distances, in the blink of an eye with a FaceTime call, with the Zoom chat call. So now it's kind of changed into a more cancel culture and everything's immediate, right? So I kind of wanted to just discuss a little bit of what culture means to you. How have you viewed it over the years? I mean, you can even think about culture, how it used to be back when you were in high school, college, and even now, how it's all shifted. The culture that we have now is much different than what it used to be. So, kind of just wanted to open the floor to everyone to see what the thoughts were about culture in general. I mean, it could be anything. It could be art, it could be music, it could be TV, it could just be interactions with people, like on the street, the market. Everything's changed.
So, question, Gian, what prompted you to want to discuss this topic, just as additional context?
So what I guess kind of inspired me to bring this topic up is I thought about art. You look at a specific painting. If you were to look at a Bansky, for example, like 10 years ago, you would have been like, man, what does this mean? A girl holding a balloon. Like there's not much context. Like it's pretty cool. It's really badass. But when you start looking, you start thinking about what it could mean based on your experiences, the way culture has changed over the years, the way it's influenced, maybe the artists or just the audience. You can understand that there's more to it than that. It could be that the girl holding a balloon amongst this chaos all around her. And so it's like this small little glimmer of hope in a chaotic world. So that's kind of what inspired me to the idea of culture. Does that answer
Yeah.
the question that you have?
So
Okay.
to answer your question, Gian, I think culture is all around us, and it's a creation of humans. That's what separates us from animals, I would say. Probably two things, right? It would be speech and culture, I think is what I learned from anthropology that separates humans from other animals. Um, and I think it's like a man-made experience that we've created for ourselves since humans have roamed the world. I think we've probably
Yeah.
had some form of not language, but some form of communication and some type of culture. And the reason I think we have culture is to set some rules and boundaries for us to behave in a certain way that's acceptable to others. Because I think again, all of this goes back to survival, kind of like Darwinism, like keeping ourselves part of the herd. So we kind of like to join similar cultures, similar tribes, I guess, so that we can get along. And I'm just thinking like back in the day, why it was invented. It's like to help us survive, because then you can tell when an outsider comes in, you know, they're gonna start making mistakes. They're not used to your language or your culture, so you can tell who the outsiders are, right? Now it's up to you to like say, is this guy friendly? Is he an enemy? But you can tell because they're not following your norms and customs and culture. So I think it's just dependent on on time, like how old you are, location, who you're with. Like, you know, at work I behave a certain way, but then I remember like, you know, a few months ago I went to a party. It's like my cousins and they're all Mexican, and I was wearing a cowboy hat and boots and listening to like Mexican music. So completely different than where I'm at work. So I just dependent on where you're at. And then there's, with like you said, the rise of social media and the hyper connectivity that just like creates a mass culture now, like pop culture, which I don't think ever was intended as part of like the herd and tribe mentality. So that just throws like a freaking curveball. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, but I'll let other people chime in on what they think is culture.
Gross.
Go for it, Hauser.
So, sorry, I just kind of looked it up because to me, that's a little bit hard to describe. I've always had an issue with culture, with identifying myself with a particular culture. You know, like we mentioned before in past episodes, you know, I come from a Mexican background, you know, but the thing is, we live in a border town. I grew up in a border town. And what's very interesting is that I remember when I went to college, like it almost seemed to me that the culture that I obtained, like the type of Spanish that I learned, the type of beliefs that I had, the values that I had, were very different than what another person who identified the same way as I did believed and thought. So, like, I'll give you an example. I grew up Mexican, right? But a South San Diego Mexican is totally different from Fresno, California Mexican. And so to me, I always thought like, oh, this is my culture. And so every Mexican's kind of like that. And then when I went to, like, for example, especially college, when I interacted with other people like that, it confused me a lot. And so, cause I got a shocker, like, whoa, you're not like me. You don't believe the same ideas I do. So I think for me, culture is just, it's identity for me. That's how I would describe it.
So kind of relating to what you said, Hoser, in college discovered that I was what is called border culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I lived in Tijuana and I went to school in San Diego for all of high school. And then when I met you guys at UCSD, I often went back to Tijuana to visit my family. And so I found myself not being entirely in the US, nor being entirely in Mexico, but somewhere in between. And that framework helped me for a good time when I was over there. But now I'm over here in New York, and that concept really doesn't apply over here, right? And so, I don't know, to me, like, more than commenting on what culture is to me or what it means to me, I want to speculate more on how it's produced, right? In an ideal world, I think culture would be the sum of our collective actions, of everyone's collective actions, beliefs, attitudes, etc. But as the theme of this podcast in which we get together, I think it tends to be manufactured from above. And it's very commercial. It's very commercial. It entails a lot of consumption. What you listen to, what you eat, what you dress, where you live, how you move around, all that is part of culture. And it's not an accident that, for example, the clothes that we wear is probably made somewhere in South Asia or Vietnam or in the elsewhere, right? Because of the way these macroeconomic systems have forced us to consume. And so there's this quote by a feminist that I can look up in a second that says that, you know, the personal is the political, or that every act you take, every position you take, even how you move, what you eat, you know, you're relating to other people. And to me, that's also enmeshed in culture. So from where I see it, it's more of a manufactured imposition from above, but there is some flux of what happens and what we do and how it trickles with how connected we are with social media, so on and so forth.
That's really interesting, Carlos. In a way, I kind of agree with you. But also disagree with you a little bit. I think culture is both bottom up and top down. So bottom up meaning like this is the customs and foods that have been passed down for centuries, like tortillas, right? We eat tortillas. I mean, when was that invented? Like hundreds of years ago, and we're still eating that to this day. But yeah, you're right. Because of the society we live in with capitalism and all that, like it flips it, takes the culture and then tries to sell it to you back like top down. I'm thinking like Disney, dude. Like Disney's a classic example. They try to copyright like Dia de los Muertos to make Disney movies. They have a couple like those Coco and like trying to take our Mexican culture, make it pop culture, and then sell it back to you. So there is a little bit of like bottom up of the centuries that have been passed down, and then this new culture that they try to like sell to you to make money. So it's an interesting phenomena, Gian. And I think what you were getting at in the beginning is like the new culture that Carlos is talking about, where they sell it to you. And then this like resistance of us trying to keep the culture that was passed down from centuries. So there's the two things are like kind of going hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, culture continues to change and evolve over the time. It's very dynamic. And what you're saying right now is like consumerism, and you're, I guess, referencing Disney as an example, right? They're appropriating a lot of these different cultures. I don't see it as a negative the way they're doing it. I mean, they're showcasing kind of what these cultures can mean. And for somebody who has never seen like Dia de los Muertos, like it kind of gives them an idea of what it is. I mean, even now, I think Dia de los Muertos is being celebrated at school, or at least shown. Like it happened to my kid too, where they have a table, they have an ofrenda, and they'll have like little pictures of like people who are have deceased. You want to just remember. So I think it's cool. It's opened up a lot. Before we used to be in a lot of different silos
Mhm.
where we like for Hoser, for Carlos, or you, Edgar, and myself too. Like we would stick with the Hispanics, and that would be our culture. Like I wouldn't want to hang out with anybody else. But now, as we've kind of evolved and progressed, and we think about community, we start absorbing some of the other cultures, kind of bringing them all together, and we try to find a way to kind of meld them all together, and it becomes this amalgamation of culture, which I think is pretty cool, just because you get a little bit of everything. It's like if you go to this table, this banquet, and you have food from different areas of the world, type of thing, you get a taste, a small little taste of everybody's food, and you can choose to kind of extending that metaphor. You can choose which one you like, what you don't like, and why you don't like it, and then try to get an
Mm.
understanding of what that culture is so
Yeah,
that you
and you
can
get exposed
understand
to
the other
like
person.
right. Yeah, and you get exposed to like new food you hadn't thought about. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking like Squid Games, Netflix. Yeah, I mean, I've learned a lot about like Korean culture just because I've been watching Korean shows. So I guess you're right. Maybe there is a positive to that.
But you're getting a sanitized picture of what Korean culture is.
Yeah,
Like
you don't
there's
get the full
people,
picture.
yeah, there's people, in suits having
Mhm.
meetings, discussing what's going to be shown to you, where you're going to consume. So I would be really cautious with that statement. And then it really caught me, Gian, what you said about your kids having like ofrendas at their school. To me, that really plays into identity politics and to like a attempt to reinforce this myth that we are one big happy family, accepting our differences and celebrating them. That to me is a myth that's meant to create some type of cohesion that I think people on the right really want to, revolt against that. These people who are saying like, "Oh, this is America." Like I can imagine someone hearing you and being like, "Why the hell are we having a
Doing it.
Dia de los Muertos at school?"
Yeah.
These
Absolutely, for
woke
sure.
liberals, like, and their head blows up, right? And I kind of understand it, right? Because to me, it's superficial. It's fake. There's not going to be some context later on in your children's education in which the relationship between Mexico and the United States is going to be analyzed in some meaningful way. I hope I'm wrong, but that to me would be really important, and I find that missing.
But I mean, the intent is to be a collective. So I think it's a positive thing that we're trying to reinforce that with our kids. I mean, the American dream, as it was the United States is built on immigrants. All right, you have people that traverse the ocean from England, come to the United States, and then you have different people from different parts of the globe that come to the United States seeking a new opportunity, seeking growth. And as we moved the frontier from like 13 initial colonies out to the left, and we continue to build, we continue to evolve as a people, as a culture. It's sad to hear you say that, there are those people who are like, no, we can't do this. We can't celebrate other people's culture. Like, why are we doing it?
But there's a lot you left out, which is
Like,
the
sure,
part that I find really interesting, right? Is that those people who sailed across the ocean, who almost died on their first winter here, who were literally eating their own shit in Jamestown and unburying their dead to eat them.
Mhm.
Stubborn ass people that later went on to perpetuate a genocide, who gave blankets infected with smallpox to the indigenous population here, and who, steadily expanded west until these indigenous people are no more. Like, I'm here in New York. I don't see a lot of Lenape here.
Sure.
Plaques here and there, right? And so that part of our history, that part of our, culture or national origin. I'm remembering a clip that Hoser said about history and how we don't like to remember distasteful episodes in our past. But if you don't remember those, how are you going to correct them? And the problem is that to this day, right now, those nation building exercises in which you go and take over a territory and you cleanse it of its indigenous inhabitants are still happening. And I'm referring particularly to Israel and Gaza. And so that's why, right? Because we don't remember, because we don't like to talk about these distasteful topics, that they continue to repeat themselves.
I mean,
So- No, sorry. So would you say that culture was made to create a division or a separation in between different groups?
That's what Edgar was arguing.
I didn't say that's the purpose of it. That's one of the consequences of it is that
Oh,
culture was
consequences.
invented
Okay.
to make you feel part of a tribe, right?
Mhm.
But each tribe has their own culture because they were like in silos, right? But one of the consequences is when somebody else comes over to your culture, they're gonna make mistakes because they're like not doing the things that you're used to. So then you can tell that they're an outsider. But that wasn't the intent. It was just to create customs for you and your people so that you guys felt part of the tribe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a really social Darwinist type of outlook, right? Like we're competing for scarce resources and we need to form a cohesive group because there might be
Yes.
another group that can come over and take over our things, right?
I don't know if it's like another group. It's more like to hunt animals or whatever you guys got to do to survive. It was meant to help you guys survive. Because again, we're like social animals, right? So we're creating these social norms in our group. At least that's what I learned from the anthropology class.
And then so then would you say then today we're trying to push towards like a overall culture, maybe a nationalistic culture, where we're all one the same culture. Do you think we're
Uh,
trying to do that?
I think that's happening. I don't know if that's the right answer. I'm thinking like Panda Express and kind of like what Gian was saying was like, it's a good thing that Americans get exposed to Chinese culture, but then Carlos was saying is like it's not the authentic thing, right? So like if I go eat Panda Express and I'm like, wow, China's so cool. Like, am I really getting that culture from Chinese, or is it like Americanized version of it that's being sold back to me for a profit? And so I don't know what the right answer is. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? And I'm thinking like when I went to Japan and I was staying in Kyoto, like yeah, they had, buildings from like the year 700, thousands of years ago, but then right next to it there's like a Starbucks, and that's us going over there and taking their culture away. So that I didn't like that. But then I could say the same about like Mexicans coming to the US and bringing their culture too. So if I'm saying like, yeah, it's not right that America is going to Japan and putting a Starbucks, but then I'm saying it is okay for Mexicans to come here, bring their culture to the US. I don't know. I'm kind of all over the
But
place.
they're
I don't
different.
know what the right answer is.
They're different because it's not us going to Japan. It's the oligarchs from the US going to Japan.
To open that Starbucks.
Yes.
Okay,
It's a Harry Schultz or whatever his name is. This
Yeah,
dude's
yeah.
an oligarch, right?
Uh-huh.
We're not oligarchs. We're not part of the
Yeah,
ruling
okay.
class.
I see what you're saying.
And when we come, we to the U.S., we come because of historical social processes that involve colonization. And we're trying to make a living. We're trying to be safe. We're trying to fit in and just have a peaceful life. So I think those processes are really different.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, and if we were to go there, like we would bring some authentic tacos from Mexico, so you get the real thing, right? Like I can make some real good tacos versus like Taco Bell. That's not Mexican,
Yeah, it's a
right?
distilled version. I
Yeah.
recently seen like the Hispanics popping up tents, canopies down like on the
Mhm.
sidewalk on the streets, bringing out the tacos, making tortillas right on the
Oh,
grill.
you know what's interesting? This is like
Pretty
a
dope.
culture kind of thing. So in LA, it's legal. If you go to LA, like you'll see them everywhere. They're all over the place. It kind of reminds you of like, when you go to Mexico and they just have like
Yeah, on
mom
the
and pop
corner.
shops, like
Yeah.
yeah, like even somebody's house could be like a place where you get tacos or whatever. Me personally, I like that when I go over there. But here in San Diego, it's illegal. So what they're doing is actually illegal. And they used to be doing it at Balboa Park a lot, and they had raids like to get them out of there or whatever. So here legally, the police would come and shut them down, and that's because the higher ups, they want this like clean image of San Diego where we don't have those people here. Our streets are like clean or whatever. So I don't know. That's the question for you guys. Like,
So so from
do you
what I'm
like that?
hearing,
Uh-huh.
so I can answer that, but I think one of the things like I'm kind of like thinking about is that with the question of what is culture, that's a very complex one, right? Because it there's a difference in cultures between uh people, right? Like nationalities, for example, right? But then you can even go further to like geographical locations, right? There's a different culture from like San Diego to Los Angeles. There's a different culture from Anaheim to LA, even just like that. And so, like you were saying, like with LA, every time I go to LA, I'm just like, what is this? It's kind of like they want to throw like certain things in your face, yet I can feel at home here. Like I don't know why. I just feel at home. Like when I come here, when I cross that 8, I'm already. Or like in New York, like for example, New York City, like you can tell there's like a very almost like free spirited culture and youthful culture. I might even say.
I
Hoser,
got I got my
I just
answer.
want to
So
push
keep
back
keep San
against what you're
Diego
saying.
keep
Hoser,
San Diego clean.
Mm.
look, Southern California is one big homogeneous thing in my mind. You get in your car, you get on the freeway, you go to work, you go to the shopping malls, you have nice parks here and there, and you have the wealthy coast communities. And people are supposedly superficial and they like to go to the gym, and they like to go for runs, blah, 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 blah. Southern California. But it's interesting knowing you that I think that the nationalistic values have been kind of instilled in you to a sense that you're proud of your city. And the fact that you're proud of your city makes you look at LA with skepticism because it's not your city. And I think it's tied with your sports. You used to like the Chargers. They went to LA. You're definitely a Padres fan. And it also begins with high school. Like the
Yeah, yeah,
nationalistic
yeah.
thing
You're right.
begins in high
Yeah,
school
you're
with your
right. Yeah.
colors, your mascot, and that goes on to your city, and then eventually it goes on to your country.
So
You know what it
eventually,
is, Carlos? I think it's his lack of experiencing other cultures. Because I think Hoser's the classic example of someone that talks shit about other cultures without experiencing them. Um, yeah, I mean, like, when's the last time you went out of the country to experience another culture? And I think that's something that everybody instead of like saying my culture is better or like, because that's how like a lot of the Midwest is like keep America America, right? It's just because they've never experienced other cultures. Like they
no,
think this is
I
the
don't.
best one.
I
So
disagree
you guys
with that.
gotta get out of your comfort zone, go experience other cultures, and then you can say like, oh, you know what? I learned something. Like it's different than what I thought, or like, or I was right. Maybe my culture was
No,
better. But at least you gotta go out of there and to experience it.
no, because there you're assuming that if I go to another country, I'm gonna go and, wow, my gosh, the fact that the Japanese do not have trash cans, so life changing. No, dude, I can go to any location and I can care less about what they're doing, and I'm just doing it from my own personal. Yeah, think about it. You said the Midwest people don't go travel. I believe there's a lot of people in the Midwest who go to Puerto Peñascos, Mexico, every spring break or every summer. Yet somehow they can come back and still be the same.
That's
Because
a good point. Yeah.
because I don't think there's like I think it depends on your mindset. Like honestly, I travel. I'm like Gian, like why do I get a Peloton
That
to do
yeah,
morning
that's a
workouts?
good
You know,
point. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
the same thing. Like why would I spend 1,000 blah blah blah? But I think with what Carlos was saying about the instilled values, I think you're right. I think from like high school they kind of indoctrinate that from you, and I think what we're seeing right now with today's culture is that that's dying little by little. I like the school pride, for example, that I kind of grew up with in high school. You don't see that no more. Matter of fact, you don't see the typical kid right now going to school like we used to. Like, like prom night. You know, it was kind of like instilled as a American something that an American kid does in high school. Like some kids here are like meh, okay, and I think that slowly is dying because social media is creating
Mm.
a new culture to our youths, right?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. It went from local culture to like now
like
it's
or
like you can get culture from anywhere through social
uh-huh.
media.
Yeah.
And so I think overall as a national, and I'll give you the floor, Carlos. Overall as a country, I think we've never had a culture, and I think we're trying to find ourselves in that, trying to find a culture there.
I mean, I can't really comment about what's happening in schools with the school pride and everything. Like, you are in a better position to speak about that. But what happens at baseball games? What happens
happens at
at
soccer
football
games?
games? What happens at soccer games? Right? Like, you have the flags, you have the national anthem, you get up, you see the red, white, and blue. When you go see Mexico play live, you hear the national anthem and everyone's singing it. I get goosebumps because I'm nationalistic. I've been indoctrinated with those values. And so I think the nationalistic projects are still very much healthy and alive. And, how that affects culture, I think is also really relevant. I remember as the shock I had when I realized that most of the people that I had read were white males, old white males. So what does that mean about what I have up here? And who am I? Right?
Mhm.
How many people have I read in my life that look like us? It's a minority.
Yeah.
Gian.
I was just thinking about like what you're describing, um, not nationalistic, but in terms of just sports, right? Looking at baseball in particular, I think recently there was like fights between SD and LA. Definitely for soccer, recently in the news, I mean there was brawls where people went to fisticuffs. And I think an SD, FCSD, the SDFC soccer team versus the LA team. Like there are people fighting.
Yeah.
It's
It's
a little
weird that
silly, I think, at times.
two things happen at the same time, right? You got people fighting because of like the pride, and I think that's like hoser people were like, no, we're better. And then there's other people like if you see the World Cup where like they mingle, it's like, okay, you're from Mexico, Mexicanos, and like they're from France or some other, they're like curious about our culture. So that and I think it goes back to like Hoser's what he said. It's just because you go over there doesn't mean you're gonna like experience it. I think you gotta be open to the idea. And so the other thing I want to bring up is the World Cup is coming, right, next year to the
Yeah,
US.
yeah,
So I find it funny that we're saying welcome, welcome all the world. We want you to experience the World Cup, but then at the same time, Trump just did a travel ban, right? Like people from this country can't come and we
yeah.
want all the immigrants out of here. Like what the hell? We're saying two different things. Like come experience the US, but also like get the fuck out of here. I think they actually said that the what's his name? The vice president
JD Vance.
yeah, Vance, he's like, yeah, during the World Cup, come visit us, but then leave. We want to make sure you guys like leave.
He said,
So
or else you had to deal with Ice Barbie.
yeah,
That's a
or else you got
different.
to deal with ICE.
He didn't say
He
leave.
got like
He's
backlash
like,
for that
yeah.
shit. But
Hey, I have a question though. So I think Carlos in the past episodes he's mentioned about horizontal violence. Do you think that when we identify with a particular culture, or that just enables the herd to just continue in that horizontal violence attitude?
I think so. And look, here's a brief example. I have more in common as do you all, with an office worker in Guatemala than with a Wall Street executive that's 14 miles from me, because of the type of life we live, because of how we consume resources, and because of the, social sphere and universe in which we live in. I mean, just think about that. Like some worker in Guatemala City who might have some professional degree or whatever, who's paying bills, maybe he's not terribly poor, but is all right. We have more in common with that person than with, me, someone who's like 10, 15 miles away from me.
Or
And
or
when,
even with like a Midwest guy
yeah, exactly. Those
than
people,
like Elon Musk.
exactly.
Right?
We have more in common with MAGA poor white supporters
Yeah.
than we do with Mark Zuckerberg, than, Jeff Bezos, than Elon Musk, than you name it. All those people in the oligarchy. Yet we find ourselves in squabbles over sport teams. And, like, you're not from around here, are you?
I kind of disagree on that because I think you're looking at it just on the on the economic point of view, and just like experience. But I think emotional and then like thought process. I think there are some things you can kind of relate with them, right? Like
With
like
a
the
Wall Street
yeah,
executive?
yeah, because they sure you guys are doing two different professions, but they probably feel depressed. Maybe you feel depressed. Maybe they feel unwanted. Maybe you also feel unwanted, and there's some commonality there.
Yeah, but I think that's shared human experience, right?
Yeah, and with that, we can have would you consider that like some sort of culture, like as a human
No,
race culture?
no, I think there's definitely a class war that we go to great lengths to masquerade. Again, part of the nationalistic project to try to convey that we're one big family when in reality we're not. And, if we are tribes, I think those fall roughly along economic lines and levels of consumption in how you live your life. In my opinion.
Yeah, and actually, I think that's like I don't want to add too much of the religious part in this, but I think that's one of the things that I've recently seen. Like that's one of the pushbacks with like Christianity is that in Christianity, you kind of have this commonality, which is the God you serve, right? The God you worship. And I've noticed that a lot of people can't seem to find that like the other factors like the economic and stuff. They can't find the commonality past that. That there's a God that we worship, but who loves you and who wants wants a relationship with you. And so that in itself is a different as a different culture, right? The religious culture,
Mm.
right?
Don't even get me started with religion, dude. Like
I mean, I'm surprised it took so long
Yeah.
to bring that up, Hoser.
Just
yeah.
42 minutes. Just 42 minutes, bro.
But okay, yeah, I mean, if we're talking about like religion, that's like forced culture on you. We were indigenous people that were converted to Catholicism, and we're saying two different things again. Like, oh, there's this loving God, but convert or else you're killed or whatever. So that's kind of the thing that turned me off from religion was learning the history, where I learned like, damn, what the hell? Like this was forced on me. It wasn't even like our
Well,
choice, you
okay,
know?
but then let's go to your regular family. There are some things in your family that when you discover them, you're gonna be like, "Whoa," and you're not gonna like them. Are you gonna separate yourself from your family and give up your last name? I don't think you will. Why is it that it's okay to put up with those things, but not with like when you learn the history of church? I mean,
No,
Carlos said
I
it.
mean, I still participate in church and like because it's part of my culture, right? Like to go to church. I just don't believe in it, like, but I'll do it. I'll participate in this culture just because it's like you said, it's comfortable. Like you feel at home, and I am able to separate the two, and it's like my belief system versus my culture and identity and customs, and they're two different things for me.
Now, I must say, and I think this is what kind of like is Bruce and Carlos is that here what we've been trying to do recently is you're trying to kind of like introduce the Christianity, the kind of like that right wing type of culture, and we want to add Christianity into it, and that to me is a little bit like I disagree with that, just because you you can't mesh it just like that. You shouldn't, but
Hey, I mean, I don't go to church. I'm sure it has a lot of positive things that it contributes to people's lives, like community, right? Community is a really big thing, a sense of belonging, relationships, structure. And I really think it gives nice and simple answers for some of life's most challenging questions. Everything. Think of any difficult question you might have. Church will give you a nice, concrete answer for it. And you could take it, accept it, and be like, I got it. It's good to go. Having said that, church is a type of organization that's made by humans at the end of the day. And because it's made by humans and humans participate in it, it's not perfect. Just look at the role of the Catholic Church. The role of the Catholic Church in Mexico, and these people are powerful. They had a lot of land, they had a lot of wealth, they had a lot of influence in the government. And, we could go on and on and on. I think we could have multiple meetings in which we discuss the role of the church in whatever society. But in a nutshell, that contains my beliefs.
So kind of wanted to wrap it up. So, culture sounds like it just identifies each one of us, right? And everybody's identity is based on a culture, and culture changes. So our identity continues to evolve and shift with the culture around us. I see it as a good thing, being able to just accept other people's cultures, because it helps me grow, helps me understand. And, I like to live in peace a little bit more. I know we're in a chaotic world where we don't like to accept other people's viewpoints, stances, cultures, but I think that we should accept others the way they should accept us. Right, Hoser? That seems like something that they teach in church, actually.
So my question for the three of you guys have 10 seconds each. How does culture fit into the herd?
I'll start. I think Gene said that culture is always changing, but I would argue that there's like two cultures going on. One is like, yeah, the one that's like changing and whatever, but then related to the herd is the one that's not changing. Like that one's the one that gets passed down for generations. And so culture to the herd means that it forms bonds and identity, kind of like what I was saying in the beginning. But you can either, like we said in the episode, you guys can fight amongst each other, go to a San Diego game between LA and San Diego, and you guys can fight because you guys are different cultures, or you guys can mingle and introduce your customs and cultures and be welcoming. So what I would say is related to the herd is, yeah, you got your customs and cultures, but share them with other people. Be open to having people come over, visiting you, be open and share them. Choice is yours.
Yeah, I think I echo a similar sentiment. The herd, we're a herd because we share similar cultures, similar experiences. To break out of it, we have to start changing our mind. We either start accepting other people's cultures, or we follow counterculture, anti-norm, dissociate ourselves to the existing line that's presented in front of us by, leadership. So we can either change some of those ideas to break out of the herd, and then in breaking out of that herd, you start developing new cultures. So that's how I think it relates to the herd.
Yeah, and I think that kind of what you guys were saying. I think the different cultures that we have here is just adding on to it's supporting us to be part of that herd. But if we want to change that herd status, maybe there may be a need for us to change the culture of the herd, right? Whether it be individuals or as a whole.
And Carlos, did you have?
All right.
You posed a question to us.
Yeah.
You want to answer?
No, you guys have some interesting viewpoints. I think my answer of how the culture fits into the herd is, I think ultimately it's meant to give us some sort of relief that we are part of a tribe somehow. Either our immediate biological links, and then they extend more to community and then to the nation state. I think in essence that's the role that culture serves in the tribe.
All right, cool. Yeah. So, gentlemen, this was an awesome discussion. It was a good one. Really early. I don't think the coffee woke me up. I think this discussion woke me up. So again, guys, thank you all so much for today. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you all for watching. That's it for today. And just remember to like, subscribe, to our YouTube channel. We also have a Spotify, and we're posting on TikTok, and we're posting on Instagram. And so our youthful friend Edgar, he's in with the youthful culture and trends, so he's helping us out with that. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you all next week. Peace.
Peace.